Right, video 5, land tenures. Now, first of all, before we begin with this, I have a little bit of house cleaning to do. Now, the last previous video was a collage of different types of ideas, all sort of put into the tapestry of English law. And hey, I get it. If you've stumbled across some of the things I've said, sometimes I speak outside of a person's comprehension, but that's only because they haven't yet fully gained the comprehension, and I'm speaking a different language, kind of, or it seems like that. No worries at all. You're going to if video 4 sort of flew you off into a different direction and you got a little bit confused, don't ever worry about any one video because a lot of things will be repeated or they will be explained in more detail somewhere along the line. Okay, so just wanted to get that out. At second point of house cleaning would be that I made uh, reference in video 3. I said for the word Celtic, I said Celtic. Even when I said it, it sounded odd, but I just allowed my mouth to carry on, and whether my brain's going, "Hey, what the hell are you saying?" But yes, it should have been Celtic instead of Celtic. And the other thing was that I mentioned end of video 4, I said the Doomsday Book, and I repeated the actual date of when William the Conqueror came into power, which was 1066. Well, the Doomsday Book, I misspoke and said 1066 instead of saying 1086. So the Doomsday Book is 1086. All right. With that out of the way, let's begin with the different types of interest regarding the use of land that began after AD 1066. And it would be good to first comprehend the areas that the new king would have needed to consider so as to then create titles of interest, which would be the tenures, that would mitigate these concerns. Now, 4 areas he would have identified at that time as a need to consider as king would be safety of all those seeking allegiance under his throne. So then that would correct. So that would then mean it needs to, for that protection, create a military arm under the king. Second thing that would have been concerned is sustenance. As his army grew, he would need to feed and house and clothe, and as well as create the mechanics for the wearers, for their armament and stuff like that. So swords and shields and so forth. So he would need to create a tenure that would take care of that issue. Salvation being the third thing that he would have to consider. A lot of these people at that time were under the monotheistic God, and so they needed salvation for many things that would otherwise be construed as sin against another man, such as murder, killing, rapine, robbery, and other mortal sins. So it would be extremely important for him to create the kingdom with salvation in mind. And lastly, splendor. The need to keep up appearances of force and wealth. And that had to dominate the majority through creating outlets that reminded the peoples of who was in charge. Additionally, they needed to be compelled to give up some of their wealth to ensure this type of regime would continue under the guise of necessity so that their land and families be protected from potential usurpers. So that we have the areas of concern plaguing the mind of this new overlord, namely safety, sustenance, salvation, and splendor. And those words were coined by Boralaskin and within his book titled Cases and Notes on Land Law. These categories provided the framework, which in turn established 4 types of tenure. They were military tenure, so as to provide protection and also further assist in future conquest. Sockage tenure, satisfying the agrarian nature of settlements, essentially to feed the people, now all tenants. Francomonde tenures, I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that right, but Francomonde tenures, those belonging to the church, so as to provide relief from the needs of the tenure system, so protect itself from what is otherwise sinful. And lastly, surgeonry tenure, which would be those we term as the elite, those who lived to be served in the type of luxury available at that time. Now, William rewarded those who fought alongside him during the conquest. He allocated large tracts of land based on status through forfeitures. What came with these large tracts of land were those who would have to serve this new lord called a tenant in captive, okay, or also known as the tenant in chief. Under the tenant in chief would descend tenants until the final laborer would be reached, the one who actually worked the land. The individual responsible for, as I just mentioned, working the land for the benefit of the tenure itself. The scale, now if at the bottom looking up, would represent an immediate lord who was then also tenant to another immediate lord until the tenant in chief was reached. So the scale was a series of landlord-tenant agreements. By about 1100 AD, or shortly thereafter. And so after the full accounting of everything that existed in each tenure was completed through the Doomsday Book of AD 1086, a series of pyramids would be evident to secure the four main concerns of this new kingdom, all granted out by the king, who at the apex controlled all the subdivided land tenures through his despotic accounting system, whereby a sea of pyramidal structures were evident, with the king being the capstone and a tenant to no one. So if using your imagination to now assemble a chart in your own mind of a pyramid, would be the king as capstone. All land is cheated back to him as supreme ruler and tenant to no one. Next layer would be a series of land grants with the tenant and captite. Under the tenant and captite, aka tenant in chief, we were almost exclusively, which were mostly Normans, would be those which we classified as mean lords or immediate lords, who would consist of less Normans and more Saxons. Those that, sort of obviously gave in to the force that King would have commanded, William would have commanded at the time. So either, hey, you abide by the new rules or off with your head kind of thing. Now, below them, below these mean lords or immediate lords, would be those who serve those owners directly above them. Below them would be those who serve the owners. So those would be other ideas of rights to holding a land interest, but not in the capacity of a tenant in capite or a mean lord, but those who, again, start working down the scale, be actually the workers or the ones that labored upon the land for the benefit of the tenure. And they would have been said to be seized in domain or demens. Now, it's spelled demens, Demense, but it's pronounced domain. So those people under the mean lords would have been classified as seized in demens, whereas the mean lords and tenants in capite and tenants in chief, aka tenants in chief, would be those that would be seized in service. They had a direct correlation with whatever the king needed, and hence why they had those four different subdivisions of tenures. And those tenures would be totally directly attached to the king, and hence being seized in service. And that tenure is called a feud, or as we know it as a fee. Okay. And the tenants that were not seized in service but seized in domain were classified as tenants paravale. I haven't looked up that word, but that's what they would have been classified as. Now that we have our tenures complete, our next video we should speak about the types of obligations that were incident upon the type of grant and its use. So, and run that mouse over the like button if you like this, or if you didn't like it. Either way, get the contact out there, and again, subscribe if you haven't done so. If this information is starting to tickle the old mind there, to find out, hey, there might be something to do with the law where I can use it and actually gain full freedom. With that, God bless in the strictest sense of what I mean by that, and have yourself a wonderful day.